Hello and welcome to this edition of Arlington Public News. I'm Paul Rowland.
And I'm Carla Dorado. At Arlington Public News, we bring stories of interest to Arlington and surrounding communities. And in tonight's newscast, Arlington looks at solutions to the opioid crisis during a recent forum. We tell you how to protect yourself from flu, and we visit the annual head of the Charles Regatta. Plus, we feature highlights from recent Spy Ponder games.
That and more coming up next. Please stay with us.
In this week's Government Roundup, we hear from tenants opposed to the possibility of being forced out of the Gibbs School to make room for students. And we hear about a plan for a potential medical marijuana facility.
During the Arlington School Committee meeting on October 8th, there was a large showing of support for tenants of the Gibbs building. Representatives from Learn to Grow, the Arlington Center for the Arts, the Kelleher Center, and Schools for Children voiced their opposition to any plans that may displace their programs from the Gibbs. Although some proposed plans to reduce student overcrowding in Arlington included reactivating Gibbs as a public school, the committee is looking at all options.
There's only one reason why we even consider or even put it as a possible one of many options looking at this, and that is that the schools are bursting at the seams.
We are with you, and we want to find a great solution that preserves these valuable programs and meets the space needs of the children in our school system, that is also something that is affordable and the residents of the town are willing to pay for. So those are the constraints that we have. And the more you are able to convince your friends and neighbors that this is something worth having and worth paying for, the better solution we can come up with, which is why I am so glad you're here, so glad you were here last time, so glad you have decided to become engaged in this process and willing to present your ideas to us.
At the October 19th Selectmen's meeting, Daniel Carton of the Massachusetts Patient Foundation presented a plan for a potential medical marijuana facility in town. With concerns for safety brought up, proposed security measures were addressed.
The systems that we are actually including in our security design, the security systems themselves, access control, surveillance, panic and hold up, video intercoms, and as well as a redundant security system that's part of the requirements of 725.110. That means is that there is an actual separate alarm company who will actually be providing a redundant security system for the site.
The way these are designed is they have a man trap or a sally port, right? So a patient or their caregiver will present themselves outside of the dispensary, not even able to come in, and they'll present themselves with their state-issued medical use of marijuana identification and a second form of ID. Then they'll be let into this sort of sally port or man trap area, at which point there'll be a security guard that will inspect their identification again, make sure that it's valid, make sure they're allowed to be in. In Arlington, MPF, Massachusetts Patient Foundation, only proposes to cite a retail dispensary, not the cultivation portion. So the cultivation portion is frequently much larger and a different set of security requirements. But during business hours, there will be a security person on site all the time, absolutely.
So is that a man trap, you called it, I think? Is that like
Yeah.
a jewelry store would have, a very high-end jewelry store?
It's you can't really get in. You present your ID outside, you present it again inside. And and it's a requirement by the Department of Public Health. One of the things I've been fortunate enough to do is work with the inspections department through a number of dispensaries all throughout the Commonwealth, and we've gone through security plans over and over again, and I'm happy to work with this group because I know they have the resources to implement the utmost security.
Full versions of these meetings can be viewed at vod.acmi.tv.
We've been hearing a lot lately about different proposals to combat opioid abuse in our state, and now Arlington's getting in on the conversation. A community forum sponsored by the Arlington Youth, Health and Safety Coalition took place at Town Hall on October 13th. It was headlined by Attorney General Maura Healey, who shared some startling statistics about the opioid crisis.
I'm Brenda Mahoney here at Arlington Town Hall, where local and state officials, police, and those from the addiction recovery field are here to talk solutions about the growing opioid crisis. How did we get to this point? Well, some are pointing to an over-reliance on prescription painkillers.
We know in law enforcement, if you look at our heroin users today, 4 out of 5 of them in this state started with pain pills. It is absolutely, in my view, at the root of so much of this.
Attorney General Maura Healey going on to say she supports stronger rules on prescribing and dispensing painkillers, as well as continued efforts to stop drug trafficking. And in an interview with APN, Healey also pointed to prevention and treatment in tackling the opioid crisis.
Education, outreach, particularly to young people, talking about the need for safe prescribing practices, talking about the need for consumers to think about alternatives to painkiller medication. Some of the work we're doing around law enforcement and creating more access to Narcan for first responders, more and better treatment options for families.
Panelist Middlesex County District Attorney Marion Ryan seconded the need for a multi-pronged approach, citing statistics that show a steady increase in overdoses across the county the last few years.
I think there's a couple of causes. I think there's a much greater access to prescription opiates. I think it's cheap. You know, a bag of heroin is now probably $4 to $6 on the street. So it's cheaper than a 6-pack, it's cheaper than a carton of cigarettes, and it's so much more powerful because of the things it's being laced with, that even a very experienced user using an amount they previously were safe with is experiencing an overdose.
I'm the jail diversion clinician. Next month marks our 5th year. We finished 5 years of the jail diversion program for Arlington Police Department. We didn't see this coming. A year and a half ago, we had Narcan night, and I thought, I think we're getting into this too late because I think the crisis is over, but let's do it anyway. And now we find that this is pretty much becoming my full-time job. I'm responding to the families. We're there when there's an overdose. We're there when their child died in their childhood bedroom. The average age in Arlington for deaths, I believe, is what, 26, 27?
The median age is 26, the average age is 29.
Right, so younger. So a lot of the officers that are responding, they knew these kids growing up. We have a lot of young officers, and we're just seeing the devastation.
Arlington police now go door to door, targeting opioid users in hopes of getting them help. Police Chief Fred Ryan, who moderated the forum, says the town is on track to double the amount of overdoses from last year, 31 so far compared to 17, 5 of which have been fatal, compared to 2 deadly cases in 2014. Chief Ryan also tells APN the Narcan that police carry has been a literal lifesaver, preventing 33 deaths in all. Mike Duggan of Wicked Sober, who's been helping police with outreach, says for him, it's personal.
I'm tired of losing friends. I'm tired of losing family, a whole generation, of kids, loved ones, because of my addiction. And, it's sad. And, there's a lot of great work. There's a lot of people that are coming together. The conversation is starting to change, and that's the amazing thing that I'm seeing right now is people are being less ashamed to talk about this as being a disease, as being an illness. I know when my mother went through it, to ask for help immediately sparked judgment, immediately sparked shame, immediately sparked guilt. And that's not easy for any family to try to help somebody that they love because of that stigma. And that's something as a whole, as a community, we have to smash, and we have to really look at this as a public health crisis that it is.
Brenda Mahoney for Arlington Public News.
Recent teen deaths in the Arlington community have triggered discussion about ways to help teenagers overcome stress, deal with grief, and manage mental health challenges. The clinical director of the Arlington Youth Counseling Center spoke to APN about the services AYCC provides to families and individuals involved in these kinds of situations.
Thanks for being here today with us, Director Suzuki. When you accept requests from your clients, what specifically you do with those services?
So what happens is that typically kids will be referred to us either by the schools, by the pediatricians, through friends who've received services at our agency. And we start by just having them do a phone intake with our intake worker. And then that might be asking just some of the presenting concerns that they might be having. And then we evaluate how kids are doing in various areas of their lives, how they're doing at home, how they're doing academically, socially, emotionally. And then depending upon what the concerns are, we try to address those issues. We have a psychiatric nurse and a supervising psychiatrist who provides medication evaluation. And if needed, we'll talk to the parents about recommending certain medications that might help also.
What are some common misconceptions about the service that you provide to families and individuals that you would like to address?
Well, I think in general in the field of mental health, I think there still remains somewhat of a stigma for seeking out help. And I think that people need to be able to overcome that stigma. And I guess the other conception around public mental health agency is that we're an agency for all, that we're, certainly we look to help the marginalized populations, the people who don't have the funds to be able to seek services elsewhere, but we're really there for all the families in the communities.
Could you tell us more about what specifically the service that you guys are providing for the teenagers and the families who are seeking help?
We can provide for the younger kids play therapy, art therapy, family therapy. We do CBT and a variety of approaches, whatever best fits the clientele.
According to Linda Suzuki, the 5th annual Out on the Town fundraising gala will be held in Town Hall on October 23rd. For more information about the gala and to get tickets, please check out their website.
For Arlington Public News, I'm Koala Shea.
You know, I have 3 children, and all 3 of them have been touched by various issues. And, we're just so very lucky to have such a wonderful resource right here in Arlington with such a dedicated staff.
Arlington really does care about its youth. It's really evident. It's flu season again. Studies conducted in the 2011-2012 season show that flu vaccines are able to reduce 71% of flu-related hospitalizations among adults of all ages. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommend that people get vaccinated, since the flu virus varies from year to year. APN met with Arlington's public health nurse to discuss flu and vaccination options available this year.
So today we are very happy to have our new public health nurse, Kara Cass, here to talk about more options of the flu shot, because the flu season is upcoming.
So many people have had the flu before, so people are familiar with their symptoms. It's similar to the common cold. People frequently get fever. Sometimes they experience vomiting, GI distress. A lot of times it's runny nose, sniffles, headaches, body aches, muscle aches. Those are the big things that really separate the flu from a common cold. One way to distinguish the flu from the common cold is that a cold will usually kind of slowly ramp up over the course of a few days in intensity, where the flu, you tend to feel okay one day, and then the next day you are, it knocks you down. So that's a good way to distinguish the flu. Now, of course, the best way to go about dealing with the flu is to not get the flu in the first place. So one way to do that is to get your flu shot every year. Now the flu virus changes every year, so you do need to get that flu vaccine every year. Even if you've had it this last year, 2 years ago, you still need the vaccine that has the prevalent strains for this year in it. Unfortunately, this year we're not able to vaccinate people over 19 or under 65, but we do strongly recommend that they go to their doctor to get a flu vaccine. The flu mist is available, generally speaking, for people ages 2 years old to 49 years old. And then there is a high-dose flu vaccine for people ages 65 and up. Wash your hands. Wash your hands very, very well all the time, before you eat, after you use the bathroom, after your hands are dirty in any way. Wash well with warm water, use soap. Wash the hands for 20 seconds with soap, sing the happy birthday song twice if that helps you remember, the duration of time. Rinse, dry with a paper towel, shut off the faucet with a clean paper towel so you're not touching the germs that you just washed off your hands. Getting enough rest and staying well hydrated are also 2 really important things. So if you do get sick, it's easier for you to fight off that bug.
According to Kara Cass, Arlington Department of Health is working in conjunction with the Arlington Youth Health and Safety Coalition, and she will also be helping the department to host forums or events to offer more public education to the community on emergency preparedness, healthy eating, mental illness, etc. in the upcoming future.
For Arlington Public News, I'm Koala Shea.
October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. To find out what constitutes domestic violence and to understand its impact, APN spoke to Ted German, Director of Training at Emerge, the first abuser education program in the country.
October marks Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I sat down with Ted German, the Director of Training at Emerge, to talk about what domestic violence means and how we can prevent it.
Domestic violence is a constellation of behaviors, including, but not restricted to, physical violence, acts of intimidation, and behaviors that are scary.
In your studies and your work, has domestic violence been underreported or overreported?
I think that there are many incidents of domestic violence that don't get reported, incidents of violence and abuse which don't get reported, and there are lots and lots of relationships that never come to light or never publicly become known.
How do you think our society creates an environment that allows domestic violence to happen?
We are talking about people being taught to feel like they have the right to have power over other people. And there are many different ways in which that can happen. And there are potentially many different contributing factors. There can be individual psychological factors, but there are also always ongoing cultural factors. So one of them is gender relationships and learning how to be, quote unquote, a man or a woman in our society. And historically speaking, and down to this day, there are different paths that are stereotypically taught by looking at advertising and our culture, taught by how people respond to you at school, in your family, what you observe in your family. So you're observing history, you're observing your father and your mother living out gender roles. And so you have these examples, and we grow up, we learn by imitating and processing and interpreting what's going on around us. And as you grow up and you grow older out of your family of origin, then peers and the general culture have more and more influence over you. And at each level, if you're receiving messages and learning about how to be a certain way in a relationship, that's part of how we learn what to do in relationships.
What do you think we as a society need to do specifically to end domestic violence?
I think that it would be very helpful if we had educational programming starting at a young age, talking about bullying and dominating and actively working against that, okay, in school situations. I think we'd have to be sensitized to how we reinforce, either wittingly, indirectly, or directly, gender roles that are not compatible with creating fair, respectful, egalitarian relationships.
Thank you so much, Ted. For Arlington Public News, I'm Erica Matera-Benoon.
You know, Carla, it's significant, I think, that Emerge started right here in Boston as the first abuser education program in the whole country.
It's also wonderful that it's taken such a firm hold across the country.
Yes. The Taste of Arlington is a great opportunity to sample foods from the many wonderful restaurants in town. This annual event was held at Town Hall October 20th and was sponsored by the Arlington Chamber of Commerce and the Town of Arlington. We'd like to thank Michael Robichaud for the video. Here's a look.
Up next are the latest highlights from Arlington High School football, field hockey, and volleyball.
Hi everyone, I'm Phil Arcaro here with your AHS Sports Wrap-Up. It was homecoming week at Arlington High, and the Spy Ponders did an excellent job on Friday, as every team playing that day got a win. The volleyball team had a big win in 4 sets against Stoneham, winning against the Spartans by the score of 3-1. They went up to 5-7 on the year so far. The field hockey team also won against the Spartans, and during halftime honored AHS athlete and field hockey player Kat Malatesta, who passed away of cancer earlier this year, by presenting her framed jersey to her family and releasing balloons filled with messages at midfield. The football team got a huge win on Friday night against Woburn, pulling off a 34-33 victory and denying Tanner's head coach Rocky Nelson his 200th career victory. Let's go to the highlights, shall we?
Good evening. Alongside my partner Rob Anthony, my name is Scott Zwick. On Friday, October 9th, the Arlington Spy Ponders overcame a 12-point deficit with 3:39 left in the game to win what we're now calling the game of the century. Rob, how did they get there?
It was a super exciting win and a probable victory. When the rain lifted, Alec Coleman took over.
Left in the ball game, and here comes the Alec Coleman show. There's the Alec Coleman show. There's the Alec Coleman show. There's the Alec Coleman show. And it stars Alec Coleman. Bing, bang, boom. You wanted mojo. There's your mojo.
We emphasize family so much, and I think we truly showed family tonight. And one thing I want to say is we got white pants and yellow sleeves for a very special girl who we played for tonight. And, you know, I think there was a cause for this game, and we all knew that. Not only was it our last home game, but we played for something tonight, and it really showed out there.
5 scores by Alec Coleman, 4 by run, 1 by pass.
It's an in-cut. It's caught! Clark Ewan!
The big onside kick recovery with 1:38 set up Alec Coleman for a 4-yard TD run to seal the victory and give them the win.
At the time, I'm preaching to the kids, you know, believe, keep believing, we can do it, we can do it. And I'm still not sure how we did it. You know, we trusted our system even when it didn't look like it was working. We trusted our kids even when, you know, in the beginning of that game, we were making some mistakes and trying to answer what happened. That's what happened.
And a big win it was for the Spy Ponders. We'll see you live on Thanksgiving. Back to you guys.
The boys of fall will take a road trip to Lexington on October 17th and will face Reading on the 23rd. The Ponders are currently the number 2 seed in Division III Northwest and will most likely face Wilmington on October 30th at home to start the playoffs. Overall, it was an excellent Friday night as Arlington sports teams came together to white out cancer. I'm Phil Arcaro, and that was your AHS Sports Roundup.
This year's annual Head of the Charles Regatta was held on October 17th and 18th. News intern Gabriella Kula had the opportunity to go behind the scenes of this hallmark event to see what's involved before the race starts and to speak to local participants about what draws competitors from around the world.
On October 17th and 18th was the 51st annual Head of the Charles Regatta. The race went off without a hitch, however it took a lot of preparation to get the course ready.
It involves painting and maintaining the course, so we have to paint all the buoys. The buoys are attached by tethers, by elastic cords that have to be reset and replaced every few years. And then we have to go out the Friday before the regatta. The regatta starts Saturday morning, so we go out Friday morning and we put the course in. And that takes about 4 hours of just putting the course in, and then we spend another 3 or 4 hours probably going back and checking all the buoys and making sure they're in the right place and that they haven't moved and that the tethers are working the way they're supposed to and so on. And then we have to go out periodically during the weekend just to make sure that the course is still intact. The buoys haven't been dragged out of line and so on.
All of this is necessary for the safety of the rowers who come to this regatta.
I think the point about the fact that you do have so many different kinds of people here rowing for again, you've got novices who've never rowed before and you've got Olympic rowers, and that's one of the reasons why the course, so one of the challenges of putting the course out is that, you've got you're guiding the crews over the course, basically from the start to the finish.
The Head of the Charles is a very special race to people from around the country and even around the world. It is a time that once a year people come together within Boston.
We've been coming for the last 6 years every year. It's just super fun. It's fun to come back to Boston. We're not from here, and we used to live here, so it's just kind of fun to come back to the city.
The race is not just special to those who have traveled to get here, but is also very cherished by locals as well. Josh Bears, an Arlingtonian, has competed in the Head of the Charles 26 times before.
This will be the 26th time I've raced this race since I was in high school. I love that you're part of nature, you're on the river, and you're in a spot right in the middle of the city, but you're apart from it. Big shout out to Arlington. Was born, raised in Arlington, so very excited to be rowing as an Arlingtonian today.
Although the weather got down to as low as 42 degrees on Sunday, races continued on both Saturday and Sunday throughout.
The wind is really an important issue because and that can actually move the course around. But it also makes it challenging because it's just we're trying to maneuver the launches and get in and out of amongst the buoys and move them and so on, and so that can be a problem. This weekend the temperature was close to 32 degrees when we get out there this morning, and so it makes us uncomfortable. It doesn't necessarily make it all that much more challenging.
Next year's Head of the Charles will take place on October 22nd and 23rd.
It's such a great sport. It's such a great team sport, such a great sport to watch, and this is just a really amazing event, and get to learn more about rowing.
For Arlington Public News, I'm Gabriella Kula.
Well, Paul, it certainly was a chilly weekend to be splashing around on the Charles.
It was, but it doesn't deter people from coming. I think next to Henley in England, it's one of the most premier events in the rowing events in the world. So it's great to see that everybody comes out for it. And speaking of England, we'd like to say happy birthday to our resident Englishman here, Gareth, who turns 50 today.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Gareth. And thank you all for joining us this week to explore local events and issues around Arlington. Check out extended interviews and our latest segments on the web at news.acmi.tv.
And don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Arlington Public.
Please join us next time for another edition of Arlington Public News. I'm Paul Whirling.
And I'm Carla Dorado. See you next time.